A tea Thanksgiving dinner. My mother said, "Do you know how much IT costs to raise you?" She placed a bill on the table. "Be grateful, we're only charging you this much." I asked, "What about my sister?" My father laughed. "She's smart, she doesn't have to pay." My sister smirked. Silently I pulled out a document and placed IT on the table. Their smiles faded. Olivia Marshall was in her 3rd year as an assistant professor in the business school at Boston University. From her office window, she could see the beautiful autumn foliage glowing along the Charles River. It was late November, and everyone on campus was buzzing about the upcoming Thanksgiving break. But for Olivia, this season brought mixed emotions. On her desk lay a letter from her parents' home in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Her mother Carol's letter, written in her usual perfectly neat handwriting, contained an invitation for Thanksgiving. Olivia sighed deeply. Her parents, Robert and Carol, had been running a small accounting firm called Marshall Accounting in suburban Minneapolis for over 30 years. Their firm was trusted in the community and had a stable client base. But in recent years, they had fallen behind the digital wave, and business was gradually becoming more difficult. Since her teenage years, Olivia had worked at the accounting firm on weekends and during summer breaks. She started with simple filing tasks, then majored in business and accounting in college, and began handling practical office work. She had earned most of her college tuition herself, supplementing it with scholarships and loans. Even now, the monthly loan payments were steadily deducted from her salary. Meanwhile, Olivia's sister Ashley was attending law school at the University of Minnesota. She had received full school at the University of Minnesota. She had received full financial support from their parents since her undergraduate days, with them covering not only her tuition, but also her apartment rent and living expenses. Even now, her parents were shouldering the high costs of law school tuition and living expenses. "You're so independent," her parents always said. Indeed, Olivia had been responsible from a young age, a child who took care of herself. Ashley, on the other hand, with her beautiful blonde hair and blue eyes, had been called the family jewel since childhood. She had a sociable and charming personality with a talent for attracting people. But at the same time she had been raised pampered, with a tendency to rely on her parents when facing difficulties. Looking out the window, Olivia imagined the Thanksgiving dinner next week. It would undoubtedly be filled with Ashley's latest success stories, her grades in law school, talk about her internship, or perhaps stories about her new boyfriend. And as always, their parents would listen with gleaming eyes. Truthfully, Olivia hadn't been back to her parents' home since Thanksgiving last year. For the past 3 years, she had been flying from Boston to Minneapolis every other weekend to help organize the finances of her parents' accounting firm. She had been updating old systems, advancing digitization, and supporting the implementation of new accounting software. Thanks to these efforts, the firm had barely managed to stay afloat, but she didn't feel her parents properly appreciated her efforts. Olivia's cell phone rang, displaying a message from Ashley. "Looking forward to next week. Did you hear? My internship offered me a job." Olivia read the message and smiled. She couldn't resent Ashley. After all, she had just grown up in the environment her parents created. The special treatment she received wasn't her responsibility but her parents' choice. Olivia replied, "Congratulations, that's wonderful. Looking forward to seeing you next week." The words were kind, but anxiety swirled inside her. The thought of sitting at the Thanksgiving dinner table once again, celebrating Ashley's success without any recognition of her own contributions, made her stomach heavy. Olivia took her keys from her bag and reached for the drawer in her desk. Inside was a notebook detailing her work at the accounting firm over the past 3 years. If her parents wouldn't properly value her contribution, she thought she should at least know her own worth. She put the notebook in her bag and put on her coat. Her job as an assistant professor, her research, and helping with her parents' office while handling everything, she still felt she needed to prove her worth. On Thanksgiving Day, Olivia parked her rental car in front of her parents' house. The 2-story White House in a quiet suburban neighborhood of Minneapolis was where she had grown up. A Christmas wreath already adorned the front door, and warm light spilled from the windows. Olivia took a deep breath and walked toward the door. As the door opened, her mother Carol greeted her with open arms. "Olivia, I'm so glad you're here, we've been waiting for you." Carol Marshall, even in her mid-60s, maintained perfect posture and perfectly styled hair. She embraced Olivia and led her to the living room. There, her father Robert was already sitting by the fireplace, reading a newspaper with a whiskey in hand. "Hello, Olivia." Robert looked up from his newspaper and smiled at his daughter. "Was your trip comfortable?" Before Olivia could answer, the door at the back of the living room opened, and her sister Ashley appeared. As usual, she wore perfect makeup and a fashionable dress, and exclaimed as soon as she saw Olivia, "Sis!" Ashley rushed to Olivia and hugged her. She smelled of expensive perfume. "Finally seeing you. I have so much to talk about." From the dining room came the savory aroma of roasting turkey. The table was already luxuriously decorated, with crystal glasses and silver cutlery gleaming. Olivia felt a moment of nostalgia at the sight, but was quickly brought back to reality. "Oh, Olivia. That sweater is quite old, isn't it?" Carol said. "Don't you think you should dress a bit more stylishly, even in the academic world?" Olivia maintained her smile and replied, "I usually wear suits for work. I just came in comfortable clothes today because I'm spending time with family." "Well, I suppose that's fine." Carol waved her hand dismissively. "Ashley, tell your father and Olivia about your new internship." As dinner began, the conversation predictably centered on Ashley's recent successes. She had completed an internship at the most prestigious law firm in Minneapolis, and received a job offer for after graduation. "My supervising partner said they've never had someone get this kind of evaluation in their first year," Ashley said proudly. "Of course, he said I'd advance quickly too." As expected. Carol squeezed her daughter's hand. "You've always been special." Robert puffed out his chest. "That's the Marshall bloodline. You'll stand out in the legal world too." Olivia silently took a bite of turkey. She had already published 2 papers in the field of business management, and was scheduled for a tenure review next year. However, her parents never brought this up in conversation. "By the way, Olivia," Carol suddenly looked at Olivia, "do you know how much it cost to raise you?" A silence spread through the dining room. Olivia stared at her mother in surprise. "What do you mean?" Carol stood up and took a folder from a nearby sideboard. "I did an interesting little calculation. All the expenses from your birth until your college graduation." Robert cleared his throat slightly. "Carol, is this really the right time to—" "It's fine, Robert." Carol cut off her husband and opened the folder. "This is educational." Carol took out a sheet of paper from the folder and placed it in front of Olivia. It was a detailed table titled Child Raising and Education Cost Statement. Everything was meticulously recorded, from clothing expenses, food costs, medical expenses, school-related costs, to even the monetary value of parental time investment. "I've been keeping records since you were a baby," Carol said with satisfaction. "Take a look at the total." Olivia picked up the paper with trembling hands. At the bottom, a total was written in bold, $324,156.86. "You should be grateful," Carol said with a smile. "That's all I'm charging you." Robert, despite looking uncomfortable, placed a hand on his wife's shoulder and smiled weakly. Olivia felt her head losing its coolness. A few days ago, while organizing her parents' office documents, she had accidentally found a draft titled, Olivia Child Raising Expense Calculation. However, she hadn't expected it to actually appear on the Thanksgiving dinner table. With a trembling voice, Olivia asked, "Then, what about Ashley's?" After a moment of silence, Robert answered with a laugh, "Ashley is exceptional, so of course it's free." Carol also laughed lightly. "That's right. Ashley is our investment, her success is our return." Ashley gave Olivia a triumphant smirk. She didn't say anything, but her expression conveyed a confidence that said, "I'm special." Anger swelled in Olivia's chest. Last night, fearing this moment would come, she had made her own preparations. She slowly stood up and walked to her bag in the living room. Carol frowned. "Olivia, dinner isn't over yet." Olivia didn't answer and returned with an envelope from her bag. She quietly placed it on the table. "What's this?" Robert asked. His voice was clearly anxious. Olivia silently took out documents from the envelope and spread them on the table. At that moment, their smiles vanished. The silence that spread through the dining room felt as if time had frozen. The documents Olivia had produced were divided into 2 parts. One was titled Marshall Accounting Firm Human Resource Contribution Record, and the other was Golden Leaf Senior Living Residency Reservation Contract. Carol was the first to speak. Her voice had completely changed from its usual confident tone and was shaking. "What is this?" Olivia regained her composure and took a slow, deep breath. "The first is a record of the hours I've worked without compensation at Marshall Accounting for the past 3 years, and a calculation of the proper wages for that work." She pointed to the first document. There, in detail and with dates, were recorded the hours Olivia had flown from Boston to Minneapolis every other weekend to help with the accounting firm. Promoting digitization projects, implementing new accounting software, training staff, meeting with clients. Everything was meticulously recorded, and at the bottom was the total market rate compensation for these professional services, $278,400. And the second, Olivia took up the next document, is a residency reservation contract for Golden Leaf Senior Living. It's the most reputable luxury retirement home in Minneapolis. The color drained from Robert's face. He stared at Olivia, seemingly at a loss for words. "I didn't know," Ashley said quietly. For the first time, her expression showed anxiety and confusion. Carol picked up the contract with trembling hands. "What does this mean? We haven't made such a contract." "No, I did," Olivia answered calmly. The deposit and first 6 months' payment have already been made. I've secured residency rights for both of you. The contract indeed bore Olivia Marshall's signature, and attached was a receipt confirming payment of $100,000. Why? Robert finally squeezed out a voice. Why would you do something like this? Olivia looked around the table, seeing the shocked expressions of her parents and Ashley. There was anger and sadness within her. But there was also a sense of release, as if something she had suppressed for years was being set free. Why? Olivia said quietly. You don't even know that I've been trying to save the family business. She took out a USB drive and placed it on the table. This contains a detailed analysis of Marshall Accounting's financial situation for the past 5 years. When I was organizing the office documents, I noticed that the company was in a management crisis. Delays in digitization, declining clients, and she hesitated a bit before continuing inappropriate fund management. Carol and Robert exchanged glances. Their expressions showed the fear of having secrets exposed. 3 years ago, I accidentally learned about the office's financial situation and began to help, Olivia continued. I introduced new systems, improved efficiency, and tried to revitalize the business. But that wasn't enough. Your savings for retirement were also insufficient. Robert bowed his head. As a longtime owner of a small accounting firm, he had provided wise financial advice to his clients. But ironically, he had lacked the same prudence regarding his own business and retirement planning. So, for the past 3 years, I've used most of my salary for 2 things, Olivia continued quietly. One is behind-the-scenes support for the office. The other is securing funds for your retirement. Ashley's eyes widened. But how could Sis do that? An assistant professor's salary isn't enough to. I had side jobs, Olivia answered simply. I've been involved as a financial consultant for startup companies in Boston. Weekends at our parents' office, weeknights consulting. I've used most of that income for the family. Carol covered her mouth, holding back tears. Why didn't you tell us? There was never an opportunity, Olivia replied. You were always talking about Ashley and never wanted to hear about my work or efforts. Ashley suddenly stood up and raised her voice. But this is ridiculous. You did all this on your own. We didn't even have a choice. Olivia stared steadily at Ashley. This isn't for you to comment on. What do you mean? Ashley's voice was challenging. Olivia took a deep breath and said quietly, I've also been secretly paying for your law school scholarship. Ashley froze. What? Mom and Dad didn't tell you? Olivia looked at her parents. They both averted their gaze. 2 years ago, our parents couldn't afford your tuition anymore. The firm's management had deteriorated, and the bank refused additional loans. But they didn't want to worry you, so they came to me for help. Silence dominated the dining room. Ashley stared at her parents with confusion and a sense of betrayal. I see. Ashley's voice was trembling. I was the only one who didn't know. I chose to do it, Olivia said gently. I didn't want to ruin your future. I thought you shouldn't have to drop out of law school. Carol wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. Olivia, we're truly sorry. I've made sacrifices for the family, Olivia said quietly. That was my choice, and I don't regret it, but it's wrong to take it for granted. And to be handed a child-raising bill on top of that, is she cut off her words. Robert covered his face with trembling hands. It was meant to be a joke, a stupid joke. A joke? Olivia's voice rose slightly. When I earned my own college tuition, took out loans, and am still paying them back? We? Carol began to speak but couldn't find the words. Olivia slowly stood up and began gathering the documents on the table. I'll discard the bill. I'm not seeking reimbursement. She looked at her parents. But from today, I want to be treated equally. She turned to Ashley. I don't resent you. You have talent, and you'll surely become a wonderful lawyer. But stop taking everything for granted. Olivia picked up her bag and headed for the door. I'm leaving for tonight. I've made a hotel reservation. Wait, Olivia. Robert stood up. Please, don't go. Olivia turned back and said quietly, I think that's enough. Let's talk tomorrow. Tonight, everyone needs time to think. She picked up her coat and cast a final glance at her family. Carol and Robert wore expressions of loss and regret, while Ashley was wrapped in confusion and shock. Good night, Olivia said quietly as she opened the door. The cold November air greeted her. She took a deep breath and looked up at the starry sky. She felt slightly liberated from a burden she had carried for years. The next day, Olivia was gazing at the beginning snowfall from her hotel window. Her cell phone had several unread messages and missed calls from her parents, but she wasn't ready to reply yet. Thinking about last night, she felt a tightening sensation in her chest. She didn't regret the outpouring of emotions she had suppressed for years and revealing the truth to her family. But she couldn't shake the anxiety about what would happen next. There was a knock at the door, startling Olivia. Not room service, said a male voice. It was her father's voice. Olivia opened the door. Robert Marshall stood there. Usually neat in a suit, Today he wore a casual sweater and looked somewhat tired. In his hand was a brown paper bag. "May I come in?" Robert asked quietly. Olivia silently stepped aside and invited her father into the room. "Here," Robert offered the paper bag. "Cinnamon rolls you liked as a child? I bought them fresh this morning from that little bakery." Olivia took the bag and couldn't help but smile at the familiar aroma. As a child, going to the neighborhood bakery with her father on Saturday mornings had been her secret pleasure. "Thank you," she said in a small voice. The two sat facing each other at the small hotel table. "Olivia," Robert began after taking a deep breath. "First, let me apologize. Last night, that was a terrible thing to do." He lowered his eyes and folded his hands. "I need to be honest with you. It wasn't my idea. But I didn't stop it. That's my responsibility." Olivia continued to listen silently. "I knew you were helping the office." But the extent he paused a little as if searching for words. "I was turning a blind eye to the truth. I didn't want to admit how critical our business situation had become." Robert stared at his hands on the table. "I relied too much on your abilities. Took them for granted. And that manifested in the worst way. Valuing one of my daughters over the other." Olivia looked at her father's face. His usually confident expression was now distorted with regret and shame. "Why?" she asked a simple question. Robert exhaled long. "You were independent from a young age. You managed everything on your own before your mother or I could offer help. Ashley was different. She constantly sought our attention and approval." He continued, "We went in the wrong direction. While satisfying Ashley's need for approval, we took your independence for granted. And as time passed, that imbalance just became a habit." Olivia gazed out the window, looking at the continuing snowfall. "Since I was a child, I felt I had to achieve results to be loved." Tears welled in Robert's eyes. "That was never our intention. We were proud of you, always. But you never showed it." Olivia said quietly. "That's right." Robert slumped his shoulders. "I can't make excuses." Silence flowed between them, but it wasn't the tense kind it had been before. It was a quietness with room for something new to emerge. "There's more to talk about," Robert finally spoke. "Last night, after you left, we had a long family discussion." He continued, "Carol, your mother was very upset. She made an appointment for counseling this morning, to face her own issues that she's carried for decades." Olivia was a bit surprised. She couldn't imagine her mother seeking mental help. "Ashley," Robert smiled, "she wants to call you. But she insisted I needed to talk to you first." Taking a cinnamon roll and wrapping it in a paper napkin, he said, "We want to consider your proposal. We're truly grateful for the senior living arrangement. But regarding the office, we want you to become a co-owner." Olivia's eyes widened. "A co-owner?" "Yes," Robert nodded. "You've already saved the firm. We can't let you continue without proper authority and compensation." He continued with a serious expression. "Ashley has also offered to establish a legal, what do you think?" Olivia couldn't help but smile. "Are you serious?" "I am," Robert nodded. "We don't want to waste the talents of both our daughters." And he continued a bit sheepishly. "Neither my wife nor I are ready to retire yet. Golden Leaf looks wonderful, but we'd like to postpone that for a while. What about my job in Boston?" Olivia remembered her current position. "That's your choice," Robert said. "You could work remotely. You could come here just on weekends. Just from now on, with proper compensation and recognition." Olivia pondered. Her assistant professor job in Boston was an important part of her career, but the opportunity to genuinely reform the family business was also appealing. "Let me think about it," she said. "Of course," Robert smiled gently. "There's no rush." Just he hesitated a bit before continuing. "Would you come back home this afternoon? Carol is preparing dinner. Ashley wants to talk too." Olivia hesitated. Last night's wounds were still fresh and they might need more time to heal. But seeing the genuine regret in her father's eyes, she gave a small nod. "I'll come." Robert looked relieved and stood up. "6. Don't bring anything, just yourself." Before leaving, he turned back at the door. "Olivia, I love you. That hasn't changed. From now on, I'll make sure to show it more." After Robert left the room, Olivia stood by the window for a while, watching the continuing snow cover the road in white, erasing old footprints. She felt the possibility of a new beginning. 1 year later, Thanksgiving. The Marshall family home was still in the same Minneapolis suburb, but the atmosphere inside had completely changed. "The turkey needs to cook for about 10 more minutes," Carol Marshall called from the kitchen. Her voice lacked the tension it once had, and now had a more natural, warm resonance. "That's fine, there's still time," Olivia replied as she put the finishing touches on the dining table. Handmade name cards were placed on the table, and autumn flowers she had picked decorated the centerpiece. The front door opened, and Ashley and her fiancé Jason came in. Ashley's arms held a bouquet and a homemade apple pie. "Sorry we're late." Court ran long. Ashley smiled as she rushed to Olivia for a hug. Sis, how did your presentation go last week? Olivia smiled. It went well. The investors showed interest in the expansion plan. Over the past year, Marshall Accounting and Legal had experienced significant growth. Thanks to Olivia's management skills, the firm had been digitized, efficiency improved, and new clients attracted. Ashley had graduated from law school and established the firm's legal department. Her specialty was family business law, utilizing the business sense she had learned from her sister. In the living room, Robert was reading a newspaper by the fireplace. Next to him, Olivia's 6-month-old daughter Emma, the Marshall's first grandchild, was playing on a baby mat. "Hello, ladies." Robert looked up with a smile to greet them. His eyes shone as he watched his granddaughter. Emma and Grandpa had been having a great time together. Carol came out from the kitchen and embraced Ashley and Jason. She appeared more relaxed than before, as if the tension in her shoulders had dissipated. "I heard about your latest trial. Wonderful results," Carol said to Ashley. Then she turned to Olivia with the same warmth. "And congratulations on securing the research grant from Boston University. I heard your paper was excellent." Robert raised his glass. "Let's make a toast to a new year for the Marshall family." In contrast to the tense Thanksgiving a year ago, this year's gathering had genuine warmth and intimacy. Carol continued her weekly counseling, confronting her past behavior patterns. She had also started a support program for women entrepreneurs in the community, passing on the business knowledge she had learned from Olivia, giving back to society what she had learned from her mistakes. Robert had built a special bond with Olivia's daughter Emma. In his relationship with his granddaughter, he was conscious not to repeat past mistakes. He cherished the time he spent with Emma every Sunday, and gladly helped with childcare when Olivia was busy with work. During the meal, Ashley sat next to Olivia and said in a low voice, "Sis, remember? This time last year, when we were here." Olivia smiled. "Yes, I remember, but that's in the past now." Ashley took on a serious expression. "I'm really glad you spoke the truth that day. I hadn't realized my privilege, but now." She took her sister's hand. "I want to be on your side from now on." Looking around the dining table, Olivia felt sentimental. The Golden Leaf Reservation was still maintained, but her parents' retirement seemed to be further in the future. The firm had given them new goals and passion, becoming a place where all family members contributed equally and were equally recognized. "Everyone," Olivia raised her glass to family. Those words meant more than just blood relations. They signified bonds based on respect, equality, and true love.